The WTA is currently in a state of total meltdown as their desperate attempt to erase the world's #1 has finally been exposed to the public. The reality is that there is a secret high-level embargo happening right now at the very top of professional tennis. While Aryna Sabalenka continues to dominate the court with unmatched power, the people running the show are doing everything in their power to make sure you never see it. This is the single biggest scandal in the history of the modern tour, and it proves that the establishment is absolutely terrified of their own champion. The documents prove that broadcasters have received specific written instructions to prioritize lower-ranked rivals over the actual world leader in every single highlight reel. It is a calculated, cold-blooded move to sanitize the tour's image and protect a fragile brand from a player they simply cannot control. But the truth is finally leaking out of the boardroom, and the WTA executives are facing a complete downfall as their web of lies begins to unravel in real time. They thought they could silence the most powerful woman in the sport, but they only succeeded in exposing their own deep-seated corruption to the fans. The shadow ban is not a theory. It is a documented reality being enforced by the very people who are paid to grow this game. For months, dedicated fans have noticed something incredibly strange about the way Sabalenka's matches are being presented to the world. Even when she is playing at a level that borders on perfection, the camera angles are tighter, the emotional replays are non-existent, and the commentary is noticeably ice-cold. The reality is that there is a directive coming straight from the executive suite to neutralize her presence on the official world feed. The WTA doesn't want a champion like Sabalenka because she doesn't fit the brand-safe mold they have spent tens of millions of dollars trying to build. They want a hero who is quiet, submissive, and follows every single corporate rule without a second thought. Sabalenka is the exact opposite of that manufactured image. She's loud, she's physically dominant, and she is not afraid to speak the truth about the insane and dangerous conditions the tour forces on its players. The villain in this story is Steve Simon and the entire executive board, who have decided that they are the gods of the game who get to choose who the fans should care about. They are using their massive institutional power to bury Sabalenka's achievements while manufacturing fake hype for players who haven't even won a fraction of what she has accomplished. It is a procedural failure on a massive scale that insults the intelligence of every tennis fan on Earth. They are literally scrubbing the world #1 from the history books while she is still in the middle of writing them. But what happened next was even more shocking to those who work behind the scenes. Internal production memos show directors are being told to focus exclusively on narrative-driven matches, which is just a secret code for avoiding Sabalenka at all costs. While the world's #1 is smashing records and hitting winners on center court, the broadcast will often cut away to a nearly empty side court to show a lower-ranked diva or a struggling American prospect. They are trying to create a fictional world where Sabalenka doesn't exist, but her sheer dominance makes that plan impossible to maintain. The facts are clear, and they are devastating for the WTA leadership. In the 2025 and 2026 seasons, Sabalenka was the most consistent and lethal player on the planet. She defended her titles with ease, reached final after final, and finished the year exactly where her talent put her, at the top of the mountain. But if you watched the official year-end highlights or the promotional packages, you would barely know she was even there. They gave 10 times more screen time to players who didn't even make it past the second round than they did to the woman actually holding the trophy. This isn't just a simple marketing choice, it's a strategic erasure of a human being's hard work. The WTA is desperate to distance itself from the political fallout and controversies surrounding Sabalenka's home country, regardless of her personal innocence. Instead of standing by their greatest athlete, they have chosen to throw her under the bus to appease corporate sponsors who want a cleaner story. They are using the global broadcast as a weapon to send a message. If you aren't the kind of champion we want, we will make sure the world forgets your name. But Sabalenka is fighting back with a fury that is scaring the living shit out of the executives in St. Petersburg. She recently went on the record calling out the tour for their insane and money-hungry schedule that is quite literally destroying the players' bodies. The reality is that the WTA leadership does not care about physical health or mental well-being. They only care about their own bottom line and keeping the TV contracts fed. They are forcing these women to play 20 or more high-intensity events a year, and if they skip even one to rest a failing knee, they are hit with massive financial penalties. The documents prove that the WTA specifically used these mandatory event rules to target Sabalenka and other top players who dared to put their longevity first. Last season, Sabalenka was docked a massive amount of points and hit with a six-figure fine because she refused to sacrifice her career for a 500-level event that served no purpose other than corporate greed. The WTA executives want total, unquestioned control, and when they realized they couldn't break her spirit, they started the shadow ban as their final act of revenge. The systemic implications of this are absolutely terrifying for the future of the sport. If the WTA can do this to the literal world number one, they can do it to any player who dares to have an original thought. They are creating a toxic system where the villain is anyone who doesn't toe the company line or smile for the cameras when they are in physical pain. They frame Sabalenka's legitimate health concerns as a lack of commitment, while they simultaneously hide her massive victories from the viewing public. It is a manipulative and deceitful game designed to break her spirit and force her into early retirement. But the hero of this story isn't backing down an inch. Sabalenka has made it crystal clear in her press conferences that she will continue to skip events if it means protecting her body, regardless of how many millions they try to take from her. She is the brave truth teller that the corrupt system is trying to crush under its boot. The reality is that she is playing the best tennis of her entire life, and the more the WTA tries to hide it, the more the fans are starting to notice the massive gap in the official narrative. Broadcasters have been caught red-handed by fans recording the feeds at home. During the major tournaments in Australia and the Middle East, the undeniable disparity in coverage was completely indisputable. Even as Sabalenka marched through the draw like a machine, the official channels were obsessed with anyone else they could find. They were looking for any possible excuse to talk about a meltdown or a procedural failure on her part. When she won a title in straight sets, the coverage was brief and robotic. When she lost a single set, they made sure to analyze every single mistake for hours on end. The industry is finally starting to distance itself from the WTA's failing leadership because of this obvious bias. Independent commentators, former legends, and honest journalists are calling out the blatant erasure of the world number one. They see the reality that the WTA is trying to hide behind their slickly produced graphics. The world number one is the biggest star in the sport, but she is being treated like a second-class citizen by her own organization simply because she won't play their game. This is where the infamous WTA playbook comes into play. The rulebook clauses are being used as literal weapons against the players. They have created an environment where the athletes are treated like disposable employees rather than partners in a global sport.
The financial evidence shows that the tour is prioritizing short-term sponsor satisfaction over the long-term health and integrity of the game itself. They would much rather have a marketable, smiling face than the actual best player in the world if that player has an opinion they don't like. The hypocrisy of the WTA executives is staggering to anyone who looks at the facts. They claim to support women's empowerment and equality while they actively work in the shadows to silence the most empowered woman on the tour. They talk about protecting the players while they actively fine them hundreds of thousands of dollars for being sick, injured, or simply exhausted. The reality is that the WTA is a sinking ship, and the people at the helm are trying to stay afloat by throwing their most valuable asset overboard to lighten the load.
Sabalenka's career is not in any danger, but the WTA's reputation is in a total freefall from which it may never recover. They thought they could manipulate the entire world's perception of tennis through their broadcast partners and their control of the feed. But they forgot one simple thing. You cannot hide the truth from the fans forever. People are waking up to the fact that the world number one is being shadow banned, and they are starting to demand real answers from the people in charge. The villain's accusations against her are falling apart under the slightest bit of scrutiny. They tried to frame Sabalenka as difficult or uncooperative behind the scenes, but the reality is that she is just a professional woman who knows exactly what she is worth. She is refusing to be a mindless puppet for Steve Simon and his out-of-touch board of directors. She is winning Grand Slams on her own terms, and that is the one thing the establishment simply cannot stand to see. Every single time she steps on the court and crushes another opponent, she is proving the WTA leadership wrong. She is showing the world that dominance doesn't require a PR-friendly personality or a submissive attitude toward the front office. It requires immense strength, legendary skill, and the guts to stand up to a corrupt system that wants you to fail. The strategic erasure has officially failed. You cannot erase a woman who hits the ball harder than anyone else in history. The WTA leadership thought they could destroy her by simply pretending she didn't exist. They thought they could make her irrelevant by burying her matches on the back courts and focusing all their energy on brand-safe rivals who don't challenge the status quo. But they only succeeded in making themselves look small, petty, and incredibly desperate. The entire industry is watching this play out, and they see a tour that is more interested in corporate politics than the actual sport of tennis. As we look toward the high-stakes matches of the 2026 season, the battle lines are drawn in permanent marker. On one side, you have the establishment, using their broadcast power and their rigged rulebook to punish a champion they can't control. On the other side, you have Aryna Sabalenka, the world number one who is refusing to be silenced or intimidated by fines and shadow bans. She is playing for her legacy, while they are playing for their bonuses. The reality is that the WTA is losing this war of information. Their ratings are continuing to drop, their credibility is non-existent, and their villain is still sitting comfortably at the top of the world rankings. They tried to create a shadow ban to protect their image, but all they did was shine a much brighter light on their own systemic failures. Sabalenka is the hero of this story because she is surviving a system that was specifically designed to make her disappear into the background. The documents, the directorial cues, and the secret instructions given to broadcasters all point to the same ugly conclusion. The WTA is absolutely terrified of the truth. They are terrified of a player who doesn't need their approval to be the best. They are terrified of a world number one who is physically and mentally stronger than the entire organization combined. Every win she captures is another nail in the coffin of the establishment's control. The WTA spent years trying to craft a narrative that would appeal to the highest bidder, ignoring the blood, sweat, and tears of the women on the court. They thought they could treat the world number one like a line item on a spreadsheet that could be deleted if it didn't balance the books.
But Sabalenka's power isn't just in her serve, it's in her refusal to be erased. She has forced the world to look at her, even when the cameras were ordered to turn away. The executives are now scrambled, trying to find a way to walk back their failures without admitting they were wrong. But the public doesn't forget, and the players are starting to find their own voices. The shadow ban was the WTA's last desperate move to maintain a grip on a sport that is moving past their old-fashioned manipulative tactics. They tried to play God with the rankings and the broadcasts, and they got caught in the act. The fall of the current WTA leadership is no longer a question of if, but when. The evidence of their bias is too overwhelming to ignore, and the financial cost of their war on Sabalenka is starting to hit their own pockets. Sponsors are beginning to realize that the tour is actively sabotaging its best star, and they are asking why they should invest in a product that hates its own best performer. The house of cards is shaking, and Sabalenka is the one who blew it down. As the 2026 season continues, expect to see even more desperate moves from the executive board. They will try to change the rules again, they will try to issue more fines, and they will try to find a new golden girl to replace the woman they can't break. But the fans know the truth now. They know who the real champion is, and they know who the real villains are hiding in the air-conditioned offices of the WTA headquarters. Sabalenka has already won the most important match of her life. She didn't just beat her opponents on the court, she beat the system that tried to bury her alive. She proved that no amount of directorial cues or secret memos can stop a person who is destined for greatness. The era of the shadow ban is ending, and the era of the player is just beginning. The WTA tried to turn off the lights on Aryna Sabalenka, but they only ended up standing in the dark themselves. Steve Simon and the WTA executives thought they'd destroy Sabalenka, but they only destroyed themselves.